ski patrollers and candidates. My name is Cameron and I'm making this video to go over how to set up a safe and efficient self-evacuation from a chairlift. So I want to say that this video is not a substitute for hands-on instruction from a certified instructor, but rather it's just a demonstration of different techniques and devices that you can utilize. Let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is how to choose the rope that you'll use for your self-evacuation. Now, in rope rescue, there's two different types of ropes out there. There's static ropes and dynamic ropes. Static ropes are designed not to stretch, and dynamic ropes are designed to stretch. For rappelling, you want to stick with a static rope. Your descent will be smoother and more predictable. So next you want to think about how long your rope needs to be. And in order to do that, you need to know the height of the tallest point on your chairlift. So with that height in mind, you can either do a single strand rappel or a double strand rappel. So let's say that height is about 50 feet. With a single strand of rope, you want your rope a little bit longer than that height, let's say 55 or 60 feet. Because you're doing single strand rope, you'll need an additional and usually thinner tag line, and you'll want that to be the same length as your main rappel strand. If you're going double strand rappel, it's kind of what it sounds like. You're rappelling on two strands of what is actually the same rope. And so you need that rope to be twice that height. So that height's 50 feet. We're going to give a little extra, so you want to shoot for 110 feet, maybe a little more. Next, you want to figure out the diameter that you're going to be using. And to think about that, you can either go with a thicker diameter or a thinner diameter. When I say thicker, I'm usually thinking 8, 9, or even 10 millimeter. Smaller diameter, I'm thinking 6 or 7 millimeter rope. And actually at that point, you'd call that accessory cord unless it's a very specifically designed rope. And you can get smaller than that too, 4 or 5 millimeter that usually has Technora or Dyneema incorporated into it. So just take a look around, see what options are out there. Some things you want to consider though are that thicker ropes, that's going to be more weight you have to carry around, but that rope is designed to hold a greater load, so it's safer. And with the thicker rope, it's easier to generate friction with your rappel device. So sometimes that's a little easier. With a thinner rope, usually that's less of a load that rope is designed to carry. It's more weight that you have to haul around, so that's nice. But also generating friction with your rappel device can be a little finicky with those thinner lines too. So most people's self-evacuation kits that I see, they usually have around 6 or 7 millimeter diameter. And if you're caught between those two diameters, one thing to think about is that there's actually a big difference in the strength of, and again we're talking about accessory cord usage in those strength ratings. Because a 6 millimeter rope, that's typically falls around 8 or 9 kilonewtons of force that it can hold. And a 7 millimeter rope, that rating bumps up to between 12 and 13 kilonewtons. So right off the bat, a 7 millimeter accessory cord is already roughly 50% stronger than a 6 mil. So if you're caught between those two, I'd go with the 7 mil. It's a little more weight that you have to carry, but it's a much bigger safety margin that you're giving yourself. Next, I'd like to talk about how you'll attach the rope to your chairlift. And this will be our chairlift for this video. And how you do that really depends on how the chair is constructed and whether you're single or double strand rappelling from that chair. So first we'll go over double strand rappelling, because more often than not, that's usually how patrollers like to rappel for their self-evacuation. So as far as how the chair is constructed, typically you'll see two things. Either it's a blank chair, there's the stem coming down from the cable clamp, and then it diverges and comes down to create the chair. Or there'll also be an additional anchor point bolted to the stem. So I'm going to show you how to work with either of those options. If you just have like a naked chair, there's no specific anchor point attached to it, then really that means you're going to be wrapping something around the stem of the chair. You're either going to wrap the rope itself, or you're going to wrap an additional anchor sling or length of webbing. And the reason you'd want to do that is to protect the rope from the rough edges of the chair. So what that might look like is I have, a shoulder length or a 60 centimeter bit of sling. If this is the stem of the chairlift, can just drape that over and do what's called a basket hitch. Add a carabiner to that, and then since we're double strand rappelling, all I have to do is clip the middle mark of the rope into that carabiner, and I'm good to go. So just like that. But that also means you have to leave this anchor up on the chairlift, which you're in the middle of a Chairlift, it's probably not that big of a deal. Hopefully you'll be able to go retrieve your gear at some point, so you'll just have to remember that. If you don't feel like leaving any gear behind, then you can do what I've done, which is I've kind of pre-set up my double strand rappelling rope. So it's all one rope, but I have each end coiled separately. And then the middle, I slid on an extra piece of tubular webbing, about 1.5 feet. So it's at the middle mark of the rope. And this webbing incorporated onto the rope replaces that anchor sling. So this will help give durability and protect my rappelling rope from the sharper edges or the weld points on the chair. And what I can do with this is simply take one of these coils, throw it up and around the stem of the chair, let it hang down, and then I can just undo each of these coils, let both ends fall, and I'm good to go. Last but not least, let's say you're lucky enough, like us at Powder Mountain, that at least most of our chairs have an anchor point already established on the chair. And it's actually a fixed anchor point that's bolted right to the frame. It's not webbing and a locking carabiner. So there's two ways you can work with that pre-rigged anchor point. You can either take one end of your rope and feed it through and pull the rope through to get to the middle point of the rope, where the middle point is sitting at the anchor. Then you can drop both ends of the rope down and rappel from there. Or if you want to be quicker, and let's say you already have your rope rigged up kind of like me, you can just take a locking carabiner, clip it to that anchor point. That gives you a accessible option to clip the middle point to the rope directly in the spot it needs to be, and then let down both ends of the rope at that point, and you're good to go. So hopefully those options make sense. if you decide to go with a single strand rappel technique, then things will be different for anchoring the rope than what they were for double strand technique. Because for a single strand rope, things are a little more complicated. You have two ropes that you'll be working with. You have your usually thicker main rappel line, and then you have a thinner tag line, which is necessary for retrieving your thicker rope. And again, you might want to use single strand rappel technique if you prefer the benefits of a thicker rope without having to carry as much of it. So, a thicker rope is stronger, it's easier to create friction, but if you only want to have to carry 50, 60 feet of it, depending on the height of your chair, then some people might want to go that way. So just know that you will need an additional tagline. And this tagline will not be body weight supporting. It's simply there to hold, or rather pull down your rappel line once you're done. So that tagline can be pretty thin. It can be, this one right here is 6 mil. It can be 5 mil, 4 mil. You could even use paracord if you wanted. But the thinner it gets, the harder or more painful it'll be to retrieve your rappel line, also depending on how tall it is. So first off, you need to be able to attach these two lines together. And for this video, I recommend using a barrel knot, which is similar to double fisherman's knot, except it's tied with both ends popping up the same way instead of against each other. I won't go over how to tie this, but if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to see how to tie it, and you don't want to look up any other videos, just leave me a comment and I could probably throw something together. Next, you have to be able to anchor this rope to your chair so that you can pull against it with body weight from the rappel rope end, and it won't budge. It will hold you just fine. But you'll have to be able to pull it from the tagline side, and it will have to give and get pulled through. And really there's two ways to do that for the purposes of this video. You can either do a knot block or a carabiner block. So a knot block is pretty much what we already have. Now we just need an attachment point to the chair that is small enough that this knot will not get pulled through. So you'll see what I have here. Again, let's say we're just using the stem of the chair. So I have my climbing rated sling draped around the stem. But instead of a carabiner, I have a quick link here. And a quick link is nice because it's very strong, but it's small. And this is a 8mm quick link size. You could probably get away with a 6mm, but I don't know if you'd want to use 10mm. That might be a little big, and it might let your knot slip through depending on the diameter of ropes that you're working with. So I put the rappel rope into the quick link, not the tagline. Put the rappel rope into the quick link. Tighten that baby up. And you'll see, and you'll want to test this out ahead of time. You don't want your first time doing this to be on the chairlift, obviously. So you want to be extra confident, know that your knot cannot pass through that quick link on the rappel side. But you'll see that if I pull on the tagline side, I can pull that out pretty easily. This is one way to do this setup. You just want to be extra sure that when you actually set up your rappel device on the rope, you are in fact setting it up on the rappel line, and that rappel line will hold, and that you're not setting up the tag line on your rappel device. So you rappel down, and you can simply pull down on the tag line until all your rope passes through that anchor point and you're good to go. let's say you don't want to use a quick link. I mean, they're made out of steel, they're a little heavy. What you can do instead of that is do what's called a carabiner block. And so for that, I can place, like a smaller locking carabiner. And I can, again, pass the rappel line through that locking carabiner. Make sure you actually lock it. I'm going to pull some of the rappel rope through onto the tagline side of things. And, kind of close to that knot, I'm going to tie a clove hitch, and I'm going to insert another and preferably bigger carabiner, locking carabiner. And I'm going to tighten that clove hitch around the stem of this carabiner, or the spine. And you'll see this carabiner creates a much bigger obstruction than this knot does. So I can pull on the rappel side, double check how that carabiner pushes up against the anchor carabiner. And I can rappel on that. Obviously, before you go, you always want to double check that clove hitch, make sure it's super strong. Pull tightly on both strands, and kind of weight test it while you're still in the chair before you actually go. But again, similar to the knot block, this will let you rappel down, and then you can pull on the tagline side and retrieve your rope. Personally, I don't really use the carabiner block much because, if you're already tying the barrel knot to attach your two ropes together, might as well just put a quick link on there, and then you don't have to use up an extra carabiner or anything like that. Another thing I want to touch on really quick is the use of a backup knot or stopper knot in the end or ends of your rappel line. Because if for some reason your rappel line is too short and does not reach all the way down to the ground, and you don't have a stopper knot in the end of the rope, then you'll rappel right off the end of that and free fall that remaining distance down to the ground. So to tie a stopper knot, it's essentially a double fisherman's knot, which again, I won't go over how to tie it, but if you tie it properly, there will be a X on one side and an equals sign on the other side. You want around at least a foot of rope in the tail. And so on a single strand rappel technique, you only have to tie this on your rappel line. You don't have to tie it on the tag line. For double strand rappel technique, you're going to tie this individually on each end of the rope. You don't want to tie both ends of the rope together because depending on your belay device, that can cause massive twisting in the rope. And another thing you want to remember is that once you're down on the ground, before you go to pull your rope down from the anchor, you're going to have to, at the very least, untie the stopper knot from the end of the rope that gets pulled up towards the anchor. So just keep that in mind as well. Next, I want to go over the different types of harnesses that you could utilize for self-evac. Right away, I just want to say I know that hasty harnesses can be constructed out of about 20 feet of tubular webbing, and those are great for a lot of situations. I personally don't really like them for self-evac from a chairlift, just because it can be tricky kind of trying to wrap 20 feet of tubular webbing around yourself in a intricate manner while you're sitting down, wrapped in a almost metal cage. So to each their own. That is an option if you want to look up other videos, or again, if you want me to make a video of that, I can put another one together. But what I'm going to focus on for this are, number one, like pre-manufactured, you know, kind of ski mountaineering harnesses, the kind that can be put on without taking your skis off. And I'm also going to show you how you can do a very hasty harness with a climbing sling. So with the pre-made harnesses, this one is the Alp Mountain by Camp, which is currently my preferred one. And Black Diamond and Petzl both make similar ones. So does Edelrid and a bunch of brands. Anyway, you reach down, bring up the belay loop from between your legs, and all these harnesses will have different mechanisms for attaching. You know, some will have more traditional buckles. This one kind of has these metal plates. It has a smaller one that slides through a larger one, but it has to be oriented a special way to undo it. So that's kind of where the safety comes from. Anyway, I really like it because these buckle attachment points are all made out of metal and full strength, you know, webbing. Whereas on like Black Diamond and Petzl, at least these two attachment points down here on the leg loops, they're made out of plastic clips, which, especially in the cold, can break easily if force is applied to them in a certain way. So I like the little added security of these. But, you know, pretty straightforward, pretty quick and easy to put on. And then you're in the Chairlift, so once you're done self-evacuating, you can just keep this on for belaying your customers and other patrollers down. So the patrollers who don't self-evac. So then we have the very hasty harness. Again, this is a double length climbing sling. It's 120 centimeters. It's nylon. What you do is you drape it behind you, and I do it so that the stitched portion is in the small of my back, just because it'll be more uncomfortable anywhere else. And kind of similar to the ski mountaineering harness, I bring these two ends around in front, reach down, grab that third portion. I pull that third portion up between each of the side portions, which will create two new small loops. And those two new loops are where you attach your locking carabiner. Make sure these strands are kind of up above, or at least on your pelvis. And there you go. Very hasty, not nearly as comfortable as a pre-made harness, but you know, it'll do the job. And I'm about 29, 30 inch waist, and this fits me pretty perfectly. So if you don't fit into a double length sling like this, you can go out, buy some tubular webbing, kind of play around with different lengths, and you can tie your own loop with like a water knot, and then like a backup knot on each tail, and you can construct the same thing in that manner. So yeah, some harness options. Now we're going to go over Rappel devices, or you might hear them referred to as belay devices or descent devices. Kind of just depends what you're using them for. Right away, I'll just start off with some kind of more climbing rock climbing related belay devices, such as like the Black Diamond ATC. It's a tube style belay device, or the Petzl Grigri, which is one form of a brake assist belay device. These are great for thicker ropes. You're not really gonna go below 9 millimeters. This is the Grigri 2. I think its lower limit is like 8.9 millimeters. So like these are great if you want to go like single strand rappel with a thicker rope. But you definitely do not want to use smaller diameter ropes than what the manufacturers recommend for these devices, because that can get pretty dangerous pretty quickly. And there are at least some like tube style belay devices that are specifically designed for smaller diameters. One that comes to mind would be like the Edelrid Microjoule. You can take a look at that. I have the Megajoule and the Gigajoule, and those are great, but I only really use those for rock climbing. For more kind of rescue, ski patrol related activities, you might be more familiar with like figure 8 style belay devices. And again, these are great. I mean, this medium-sized one is great for larger diameter ropes. If you needed to, you could swap it around and put like a smaller diameter through the small eyelet. Or you can double wrap a rope through a figure 8 to increase friction if you're working with a smaller diameter. But what this lacks in is really the ability to create additional friction while on the move. And that's especially more important if you're working with a smaller diameter rope. Say you're doing double strand rappelling with like a 6 or 7 millimeter line. You can do it with this, but you'll be a lot more comfortable with something like these. This is a smaller figure 8 with some extra, friction ears on it. And this is, kind of a plethora of gadgets molded into one. It does have a figure 8 style opening, but it also has tube style or plate, plaquette, however you want to call it, additions as well. But it has these, this is made by Sterling. I think they call these like hyper horns or something. These are great for applying additional friction in the rope. So these can both be utilized with large and small diameter ropes. They can be used to rappel on, they can be used to lower like a toboggan, lower another patroller if they're not comfortable rappelling. Who knows? Very versatile. So I'll dive into more detail with each of these items because I think they're pretty cool. So first up we have, it's called the Rock Exotica Mini 8. You guys can probably read that. I didn't mention yet, but it does have a single like tube style or stitch plate, so it's nice for, you can use that for lowering, you can use that for ascending, you can use that for belaying. Probably wouldn't be my first choice in belaying, but I'll do it. But another thing that's nice about it is in the small hole, which is the attachment point for your belay carabiner. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a kind of a rubber ring around the inner perimeter of that, which, it can make it a little tricky to put a carabiner on. But once it's on, it's on. Like, You know, you open this up to put the rope in or attach it to your harness, and you're not going to drop this off of the chairlift, which is great. I actually put this on opposite of what I want to do. All right, cool. So, you know, carabiner goes on your belay loop. Or if you have a simpler harness that doesn't have an actual belay loop, you'll typically, and always check the directions that come with the harness, clip that carabiner around the waistband and whatever's coming up from the leg loop is usually a good way to go. But pretty straightforward, and there's a couple different ways to create friction with this, but you know, if you don't need that much friction, you can just clip the rope, you know, push a bite through the figure 8 head and just clip it into the carabiner. That'll be, you know, it gives you a little bit of control, but not a crazy ton. If you think you'll need more and you haven't actually started the rappel yet, what you can do is actually take the carabiner off your harness. Again, poke a bite through, put it all the way around the carabiner, then clip it to your harness. And so with the rope wrapping behind the actual body of the Mini 8, that creates more friction. And while you're rappelling, you know, if this turns out to not be enough, which is actually kind of common, because if you think about it, when you first start off the rappel, if you're up like on a chairlift or top of a cliff, all the rest of the rope, which is really a continuation of the brake strand, is hanging below you. And all that weight helps create additional friction. But as you start to rappel down and less of that weight is below you and rather turns in the rope above you, some of that friction, that automatic friction, disappears. And so if it's a long enough rappel, you might find yourself wanting to add friction as you go down because it becomes harder to maintain a constant speed. So that's where these nice little friction ears come into play. A really quick way to add friction is to just pull that over the top, right like that. Helps me add friction. If I need more, what I can do is I can literally wrap from the down up all the way around like that. And that's already creating like a lot of friction. A similar way that the Rock Exotica says might be a little smoother is instead of going straight up and over, come at an angle, wrap around like that. They say that's a little smoother. I haven't really noticed a difference, at least with these smaller diameter ropes. The smaller diameters, when you start wrapping them like this, they get a little grabby. Just depends what the stiffness of it is like and stuff. Yeah, it's the Mini 8, and again, there's other ways to use this, but only really showing you what you need to know to be able to rappel by yourself with it down. And what I was showing you, obviously I was showing you with a double strand thinner line, this 6mm line. You could do it with 9mm, 10mm. I think they have this rated up to like 10.9 or 11mm single strand it can fit. So kind of pretty impressive for how small it is. Next I want to go over the Sterling ATS. And this one is great because again, it has the figure 8 option. It has 2 tube style openings. It has the friction horns on it. And this one as well has the little rubber, kind of gasket or whatever in there to help keep your carabiner on. But also, if you look at it, it's not flat when you look at it from the side. And that means you can either orientate it, you know, like that. Or you can orientate it like that. And depending on how you do that, that either generates more or less friction, which is great. But you need to know ahead of time before you're attaching the rope which version you want. I find most of the time if I'm working with smaller diameter ropes, I'm doing it where it curves away from me, which generates more friction. So again, I won't dive too deep into detail with this. You know, if you buy it and you want more info on it, again, leave a comment. I can make more videos, but these hyper horns are great. You can wrap the rope around pretty much as you need to. And there's also another cool way to use this with the stitch plate. If you poke a bite through and then you give the tail like a half twist to create another bite and poke that through the other side, gives you a really cool other variation. And it's cool because if I pull back on the top, it reduces the friction. And if I push it up and kind of grab onto the main line, it actually increases the friction. So it's kind of like having a little brake lever. You can fine tune your descent. So, pretty nifty. A very useful trick to know is what to do in case you're up on the chairlift and, oh no, I dropped my belay device. Well, if you still have a carabiner, hopefully a locking carabiner, you can tie a special hitch called the Munter Hitch or Munter Hitch, depending who heard it from first. And it's essentially just a hitch that creates friction with the carabiner and lets you use it as a belay device. And it's actually pretty straightforward to tie. It's kind of like a undone clove hitch. What I like to do is with my brake hand, and I like to use my right hand as my brake hand, I make a loop and then I bring the brake strand underneath kind of the standing end of the rope and clip my carabiner to that hitch. Again, and the cool thing about it is if you pull on the brake strand, it actually flips and reverses. That's one way to kind of know that you're using it right. So this can be used to lower, this can be used to belay, this can be used to rappel. Pretty straightforward, you know. Take out the slack, let it flip back through. Oh, you guys can't even see me. Lower down. And so I'm using this on a thicker rope just for simplicity to show you guys. If for some reason this isn't creating enough friction for you, and I wouldn't recommend having this be your like go-to device. I much prefer an actual belay or rappel device, but if you need this, this is why I wanted to show you it. If you need more friction than what this can create, say if you're on a thinner line, you can create what's called the Monster Munter or the Super Munter. And to tie that, you actually tie like for me, I tie a left-handed munter first, and then it's kind of weird, but you have to kind of construct a right-handed munter on top of it if you want to end up with a right-hand brake strand. And again, I'm not really showing you this in too much detail. If needed, I can create a more specific video. It's kind of hard to pull rope through it to weight it. Oh, it's not too hard, actually. I'm just being lazy. There you go. Got my slack taken out, and this creates a lot more friction. And I didn't say it earlier, but like the Rock Exotica Mini 8 and the ATS, the Sterling ATS, when those are used in like figure 8 mode, just like any other figure 8 style belay device, they will put twists in the rope as you go down. So will a single Munter Hitch. But the cool thing about a super Munter Hitch or a monster Munter is that because you're kind of making a left and a right Munter within each other, for the most part, those twists get canceled out. Yeah, it's just kind of cool. Anyway, there you go. It's good to have this little trick in your back pocket. Hopefully you never need it. Another thing to know about with your belay device or rappel device is how to lock it off, which means being able to secure it so you can take both hands off brake strand and you're not going to go anywhere. It's going to hold you. And since we've been focusing mostly on figure 8 style belay devices, that's just what I'll go over really quick. Because there's kind of a unique, fun way to do that. So I need to bring the brake strand up and away from me, and I'm keeping tension in the brake strand as I'm doing that. You can either do it with one hand, two hands. Always make sure you have a hand on the brake strand. Bring it up, and with this device, I need to kind of get that out of the way. Loop it under this horn, friction horn, and pop it down. Now immediately that's going to hold me, but it's nice, like this is nice if you need to do something really quick and like you're still kind of keeping the brake strand in your hand, but maybe you just have to like play with something. But if you know you need to hang out for longer or you need to be able to completely let go of the brake strand, gonna come around that hyper horn on the bottom, come up and pop it in again, and then go around that hyper horn one more time, come up, and on the main line with my tail, I'm going to do what's called a mule hitch. I'm going to take it up, drop a bite down. Again, I'm not going to go over this in too much detail. Pull a big enough bite through that I'm now going to do an overhand. Got a mule overhand on that main line after popping through that figure 8 2 times. And so now I'm super secure. I can let go, do whatever I need to do. Maybe I got snagged on, I don't know, anything. We're below a chairlift, so hopefully there's nothing to get snagged on. To undo this, you simply do the whole thing in reverse. You undo that overhand, undo that mule, and now I'm keeping tension in the brake strand no matter what and not letting go of the brake strand. Coming back around those hyper horns, and to undo these two initial wraps, you kind of get it lined up properly, and then you pull down quick and smooth. and it pops it out. So that was the first one. Remember, I'm still need to do that last one, so it can still hold me right now, but lining that up nice and proper. And when I pop this, I'm not going to have any sort of tie off. So I better be ready to hold my full kind of friction. So that's undone, and I can keep lowering. Another aspect of utilizing a belay device is using a backup or a third hand. And what that is, what it does for you is, it means if you let go of your brake strand, which you hope never happens, the third hand or the backup will grab the brake strand, or in some situations the load line for you and keep you from free falling. Because once you let go of that brake strand, typically there's not much friction getting generated in your belay device. So kind of an older method is using what's called an auto block or a French Prussic or Prussic right down on the brake strand, and doing that by clipping a carabiner like around your leg loop on your harness. And a lot of people don't really recommend that because your leg, if it picks up, it allows that friction hitch to get close to your belay device. And if your auto block friction hitch starts to rub up against your belay device, that can defeat the friction hitch and allow rope to slide through it, and it doesn't really do anything for you. So you can get away with it if you're being aware of it, but as far as what I want to teach you, we're gonna do what's called extend the belay or extend the rappel. And to do that, toss that down there for a bit, I'm going to need an additional sling. So this is a double length sling. You notice this is a little different than the sling I was using earlier. That's because this one is made out of Dyneema. It's still strong. It's more static though. Nylon stretches a little bit. This is very static, but it's lightweight, so it's great. There's two ways to go about this. I can literally just, kind of like we saw earlier, basket hitch this through my harness. I'm going to keep the stitched part of it nice and close. And I'm not doing it through my belay loop, I'm doing it through the two hard points. But I mean, you could do it through the belay loop if you wanted to. And right here at the top, I'm going to tie a figure 8 on a bite. You could always do a overhand too on a bite, that'd be fine. Figure 8 is nice because I don't need this to be like too long, and the figure 8 helps use up some more product, so it's a little shorter. Now to that, I can clip my Rappel device, and this operates just like normal. And this actually makes rappelling easier, especially if you're keeping your heavy backpack on your back while you rappel down. It makes it easier to handle where your center of gravity is, so you're not like tipping over. But what this does for me, it lets me clip my third hand or my backup to my belay loop now, instead of clipping it to a moving spot like a leg loop. So this will keep it nice and far away from my Rappel device. So I'll just do a really quick, again, auto block or French Prussic. You can do it with just a loop of like 6 or 7 mil cord, or I have, it's called the Hollow Block by Sterling. It's just specially designed to be used as a friction hitch. It's made out of material that has a very high melting point, so it can put up with the abuse of having rope run through it repeatedly for quite a while. I've had this for a fair bit. Probably need to replace it. But anyway, how it works is if I, cinch it up properly, if I let go of the brake strand, it stops the rope for me. Keeps me from falling if I let go of the brake strand. It's like a third hand holding the brake for me. When I want to rappel, keep the brake strand in a hand, put another hand up on top of the hitch, and slide the hitch down, and that loosens it up enough that rope can go through. But if I want to stop, I can let go of that hitch, and it grabs the brake strand again for me. So some patrollers might not find it necessary to use for self-evac. It's extra time you have to put wrapping this around the rope. It's extra gear you have to carry around, so it's more weight in your pack. But just want to show you guys, it's a nice little added security. Another kind of specifically made product that I can show you, just because I'm kind of a gadget guy if you haven't caught that yet, is a type of third hand or backup that you can use if you don't want to extend your rappel device. And that, let me get this on my hand really quick, is called the VT Prusik, which is short for Valdetane Prusik. It's kind of a double-eyed length of material that's similar to that hollow block. It's designed to act as a friction hitch, so very high melting temp. And both of these, they don't really have like a core in them, so they can actually flatten out almost to where they're kind of like tubular webbing, and it allows them to create a broader surface area, make a bigger contact patch with the rope they're wrapped around, and generate more friction. So that's why that other one is called the hollow block, because it's hollow on the inside. So to use this, again, I'm not going to show you how to tie it. I can direct you guys to some extra videos if you want to see how that works. Or how you set it up. I am going to show you how it works, because it's actually very cool. So you'll see I have this clipped into the top of my Sterling ATS, just so that's a nice convenient mounting position. So there's nothing I'm like connecting down to my leg loop. The only thing on my belay loop is my belay device. It's pretty clutter free. And normally if you put a different type of friction hitch up above your belay device on the load line, like a Prusik or a auto block, once you set that on the line and lower yourself so that all your weight is on that friction hitch, it can be very difficult to break that friction hitch free and continue to lower. That is not the case with the VT Prusik. It's very easy to, even though I'm not free hanging on this, but I have all my weight on it, my brake strand's light, loose. Just pull on it a little bit, and I can lower myself. And as soon as I let go, it seizes back up. It's very convenient. You can even potentially just rappel on the friction hitch alone. I don't do that, but you can. Anyway, so that's another type of backup or third hand that you can utilize. And this, the VT Prusik in particular, is great because it has a lot of applications outside of just acting as a third hand. Now you can use it to pass a knot when you're rappelling or raising someone. You can use it as a progress capture in a pulley system. You can use it as a backup when you're lowering someone. You can use it as an ascender that can also descend. It's great. Anyway, that's what I got for you.